make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
New Trail Brewing Company proudly crafts their beers right here in central Pennsylvania. Brewed with only the best possible ingredients, New Trail produces a variety of year-round brands as well as weekly experimental recipes. New Trail Broken Heels is Pennsylvania's favorite local hazy IPA. This beer is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is perfect for a pregame tailgate all the way through the victory celebration.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
Hey kids, welcome into another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Coming off a very memorable national championship game, dear Goon.
Oh, it's amazing. Holy hell. Wow, was that it was pretty bad, man. I remember the Bears beating the hell out of the Patriots in the 85 Super Bowl, but I don't think I've ever remember a beatdown that bad.
Yeah, not with that much on the line. And, it got to the point where you almost felt sorry for the TCU kids, right? I mean, they're excited, obviously, for the opportunity, and you're hoping you can show up big on the big stage, and they've done it all season long. And, for whatever reason, everything just clicked for Georgia, and there was nothing going right for TCU on either side of the ball. I wasn't necessarily surprised that Georgia had the success offensively that it did. I was surprised that they were able to just completely shut down TCU. I'm not surprised Georgia won, and not shocked that they won comfortably. I am shocked that it was 65-7, and they could have named the score. I just thought TCU up front was going to be better equipped than they were against that Georgia defensive front seven. Really.
I was involved in some pools and stuff like that, so I had to pick the winner of that game because I was actually in one of the top spots, and I just don't know after last night's game what in the hell Michigan was doing last week. What Georgia did out there is exactly what Michigan should have done, and just gone out there and just tried to hound them. And they just kept making mistakes last week. And somebody said on Twitter today, if Michigan plays TCU last week 10 times, how many times do you think they win that game? It's a good argument to think, but
yeah,
like we said a month ago, when we were going into our bowl predictions, and I said, I thought that Ohio State matched up the best with Georgia. And they did. And then Ohio State played their best game. And then Georgia was lucky to get away with winning that game big time. But, man, Georgia they looked – I don't remember such a dominating performance in anything. That was just insane what they did, how they did it. Crazy.
And Stetson Bennett was not on a week before, not anywhere
exactly.
like that. And man, was he just dialed in.
But my thing is that Michigan's defense was literally the best defense I saw in the country this year. They really, really, really were. And to do what TCU did to them, and they ran the ball on them and they threw the ball at them, and it's just like they weren't prepared for TCU, it seemed like. And TCU exploited them, and Do you think the gap is that big between a TCU and a Georgia, or was it just like I always used to say, Paterno used to say, sometimes it just happens like that, and it just like avalanche going downhill, it's just going to catch up on you.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's one of those things. Another Paternoism was, you're never as good as you look when you win, never as bad as you think you are when you lose like that. I do think it was a combination of things. I think TCU, I thought those first couple of series, and I kept thinking TCU would settle down, but I thought Duggan was clearly just overly hyped. And I get it, right? I mean, who wouldn't be? But I think the experience that Georgia had on that stage showed through, and I think that was part of it. I do think Georgia's the best team. I mean, I think they are rightfully the national champions here this season, and I don't think there's much of any doubt about that. I don't know that the gap is as wide as last night's game would lead you to believe. Again, Ohio State was right there. If the field goal, if they get a field goal like the Dolphins did on Sunday, we're not even talking about Georgia and a dynasty and all of that. So that's, the fine line that you walk in college sport and sports period, right? Like, and we talk about it sometimes in wrestling. You'll get a match where a guy just absolutely hammers somebody. And I think back to last year, not to bring everything back to wrestling, and
sure,
those of you in the drinking game, go ahead, take a swig. But I do think back to last year or 2 years ago, Michael Kemmerer of Iowa beating Carter Starachi in the Big Ten championships, and it was a sound win. I mean, it wasn't like, oh man, could have gone either way. It was Kemmerer. I wouldn't say crushed him, but I mean, he controlled the match.
He hammered him
comfortably.
Yeah.
And that's why nobody outside of maybe the Penn State locker room was thinking that Carter Starachi was going to win the national title when they met again. But again, you make an adjustment here or there. And I'm not saying, TCU, give them 2 weeks and they play again, it's a different outcome. But I do think it could be a different game. I mean, I think, again, Duggan just never really seemed to settle in and get comfortable. And part of that was Georgia's defense, but part of it was he just was off. He just had one of those nights. And again, I don't know if it was just, the stage. I don't know if it was just, hey, it was just an off game or whatever. But he had time for I'm trying to think. It was like the first 4 series. There were 2 big plays, 2 big sacks, and they were monumental sacks because it changed the whole complexion of those drives. But outside of those 2 plays, Goon, the offensive line of TCU was giving Duggan plenty of time, and he was just misfiring.
Yep, and I watched the for some stupid reason, I got up in the middle of the night. Okay, girls. I got up in the middle of the night, and the game was being replayed. And
it
was
celebrating the Dogs' win back there. I understand.
Exactly. No doubt about it. Their cousin Uga, they're all fired up. But if you recall, it was 17-7, and it was turning into. I looked at my wife at that one point, and I said, "If they don't score here, this game's over." And she's like, "It's the first quarter," and I said, "They're not stopping them." And they were driving a little bit, and I recall the right tackle left the game with a shoulder injury, and they had to move a left tackle in off the bench, and the left tackle moved to the right tackle. And that next play, they gave up an 8-yard sack.
Yeah.
And that was it. And that was like, okay, 3rd down and 19. And he overthrew somebody and they punted away. And then all of a sudden it's 24-7.
Yeah.
And then it was like the snowball just kept on building and building and building. And but you are right. He did have the time early in that game. And then he was trying to make the perfect throws. And I forget, I did watch a ton yesterday of the pregame stuff, like hours, because I was bored. And I remember somebody said that the problem he had against Michigan was he had a lot of open receivers and he overthrew them a couple times. And in that 3rd drive of the game, you said it. Yeah. He had the guy wide open. The guy would have gone the distance, and he overthrew him. Yeah. And I was just like, oh man, it was like he needed to play a perfect game to keep them in that game. But 100% correct with the offensive line protecting him early in the game. I mean, you can't. I mean, just the fundamentals of the guy fumbling on the third drive of the game on a sweep to the left, and he has a ball in his right hand. I mean, that's football 101. The first freaking thing you learn when you're a running back. Get the ball in the outside arm, keep it away from the defender, don't let him attack the ball. And sure as hell, he goes and fumbles the ball, and then bang, bang, it's 17-7, 3 or 4 plays later. So a lot of stuff went down that could have been remedied and changed, but it just was not TCU's day. And with that said, everything Georgia did last night was unbelievably on the right. I mean, they couldn't mess anything up.
Well, and it is amazing. I was thinking about this, and the ever optimistic Ironhead shining through here, but it is interesting how quickly things can change, right? Because going into 2 seasons ago, okay, start before the 2021 campaign begins, right? Alabama clearly the best team in college football, best program in college football. I shouldn't say best team, but everybody agrees Alabama is the standard bearer as a program. And no question, Ohio State is the standard bearer in the Big Ten. And not sure whether Jim Harbaugh should be keeping his job or not. Not sure whether or not Michigan's ever going to get there. Curious to see what Kirby Smart can do with the Georgia program. Can they, at least challenge Alabama with some regularity? Well, now 2 years later,
yeah,
and Michigan, NCAA investigation pending, is the standard bearer in the Big Ten, and Georgia clearly, for the moment, has replaced Alabama as the program in college football. Now, that being said, I do think some folks are overstating. I was watching some of the ESPN coverage today. It's not as though Ohio State or Alabama have fallen off the map.
Correct.
I mean, Alabama, we can argue at the end of the day may have been the second or third best team in the country. I think clearly a top 5 program, and they'll finish 5. And, Ohio State, again, right there with the team that everybody now agrees is the standard bearer in college football. So, it's not like Alabama and Ohio State are struggling all of a sudden, but I am curious to see. It just feels like these next 2 years are a huge opportunity, a big window here for Penn State and James Franklin to try to come crashing through and join the party. And I'm not saying Penn State's going to replace Ohio State, Michigan, or Georgia as the standard bearer in the Big Ten or the nation, but I'm saying I think there's an opportunity here for Penn State to join the party and be one of the programs looked at the way those teams are. But it's got to happen. I mean, these next 2 years are just critical, and the close would have, should have, could have arguments about I think Penn State should have gotten in over Washington. You just got to do it. Penn State has to get in there in at least one of these next 2 seasons, and especially with the expansion in 2024. I mean, it's going to be it'll, I think, mean more if they can do it next year. Right. But I think it absolutely is imperative that it happen within the next 2 seasons that Penn State is part of the playoff picture.
I agree. I mean, are we at the point right now where this season is going to be a bust if they don't go to the college football playoff? Now, things can change. I mean, guys can get hurt early in the season, and it throws everything into a tizzy. But I mean, I'm in that camp right now, is saying, you know what, this is the year. Next year is the year to get into the playoffs, the 4-team playoff before the 12-team starts. It's that time. It really is. I mean, there is definitely some people at Ohio State looking in the mirror right now saying, what do we have to do to get to that next step? And you're sitting there and you just got to look at them and saying, you know what, you've been in the playoffs how many times now? It's okay, but they're to the point where they have to take the next step to win it. And I think they may be frustrated enough that they might take a step back, and that's scary to think. And who knows what's going to go down with Michigan? I mean, Harbaugh might be going to Denver Broncos for all we know. But you said the the violations that Michigan committed. I mean, come on. Are you serious? We're talking about giving guys millions of dollars as players, and they're going to catch flack because they bought cheeseburgers for recruits at a restaurant? I mean, what world are we freaking living in?
Yeah.
It's just now I get it. They're not mad at that. I guarantee you they're not mad at that. They're mad that Harbaugh told them that he didn't do it. That's how I feel.
Oh,
You
I think as always, the cover-up is worse than
the cover-up. And that's what it is. I think that it's like when you tell your dad, he looks at you and goes, I'm mad at you, but I'm more disappointed that you lied to me when he asked you yes or no, did you do it? You know what I mean? And I think that's where the NCAA is with Michigan right now, because that's what did Tressel in, even Pete Carroll, because he lied to the NCAA, and that's what they really dropped the hammer when that happens. And it's crazy to think, because of where football is, where college sports are right now, that something as trivial as getting some cheeseburgers for some recruits could be a big no-no. Just bizarre world, Ironhead. Bizarre world.
It is. Just taking an early sneak peek at the Big Ten next year, I do think, aside from obviously for us at least, and I really think nationally, Penn State is going to be one of the big stories next year. I think Penn State, and following this program and the freshmen with Abdul Carter and Drew Aller and the two running backs, I mean, there's a lot of star power there that got a lot of attention, certainly the second half of this season, and I think lays the foundation for Penn State being one of the storylines to watch next season. But the two other components to me that I think just make the Big Ten fascinating next year, Luke Fickell coming in at Wisconsin, Goon, is just really interesting. He was at the wrestling match on Friday night, and I didn't get a chance to hear. I know he was on the Big Ten Network with those guys for a while, but there is, just talking with a few of the folks out there, I mean, it is palpable, the energy that program is getting off of the hire of Fickell. Now, again, we've seen big name hires go awry, and we've seen big name hires turn out fantastic. And I don't know for sure how this one's going to go. But it feels like this is a really good hire by Wisconsin. And I think that's a team that the talent is much better than the record would indicate this season. I think there is a chance for a huge, drastic, and immediate turnaround with that Wisconsin program next season.
I 100% agree. And then because he does have the horses. They are a bowl team. They are a bowl winning team the last few years. So it's not like the cupboard is empty like Rule is getting. Matt's getting an empty cupboard over in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So we know what Matt can do when he recruits and does all that. We know that. But Fickell, he has a proven product that he's working right now, and then he's going to bring his values into it. And you're going to look at a team, Cincinnati, who was in the playoffs. Luke Fickell led a team from Cincinnati into the playoffs a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny that. And what he's going to do there, I mean, some of the stories coming out about Paul Chryst, like not having recruiting coordinators, not doing all this and all that, that was just insane to hear.
Yeah.
Really, really insane to hear. Like, what kind of program was he running, and how did they not implode? I guess they were well on their way to imploding, and then they nipped it in the bud real quick, and then got rid of him, and then had Leonard take over. So Fickell taking over a proven product is going to be a big, big thing. It really is, because they have the fan support rate. The fans have not been, turned away. They're not disappointed. They're still there. They're proud of the program. He's got a hell of a lot of players out there, and he won with a hell of a lot less at Cincinnati. So,
sure.
I mean, Minnesota's another one. They're on a 7-game bowl win streak, by the way.
Yeah. That's
huge. A lot of momentum building out there in the West, and it's needed. They're a little shot in the arm to the Big Ten, in my opinion. But by the way, did you know that Fickell was a huge wrestler at growing up in Ohio?
Oh, yeah.
I think he was a 3-time state champion out there. So, and then him and Vrabel and Matty Finkus, and I think they had another guy down under one of their deals, and they were all wrestlers. It was like sitting there. We're playing him in '94, and Bucky Greeley's out there, and it was like a wrestling match going around over there. So
yeah. Fickle wrestled collegiately. I mean, it was like a second sport for him. It obviously wasn't his focus, but he did wrestle several varsity matches for.
I didn't know he wrestled in college. I know he was at Ohio. I thought he was at Ohio State. I had no idea he wrestled.
He did. Awesome. Yeah, he was not. I don't think he was ever he started some duels, but I don't think he was ever the starter. I think he was, filling in. If I remember right.
He's a lot thinner than he used to be. He was definitely the heavyweight because he was an interior D lineman.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He wasn't a small. He's a much smaller man right now than he was, because he was a big D tackle. He's probably pushing 280, 300 pounds when he was in college. So, no, I didn't know that, Ironhead. Holy hell!
Yeah,
that's pretty cool to know, though.
Yeah, no, and he's a big wrestling guy. He loves the sport, and at the press conference when he was hired out there was they asked him what he was looking forward to in returning to the Big Ten, and he said, I don't know if it was the first thing out of his mouth, but it was if it wasn't, it was right up there. But he said, yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to watch Big Ten wrestling again and being able to be back in that environment. So that was kind of neat to have him in the house.
That's very cool, man. Because I mean, I have a lot of wrestling friends. I mean, I'm on the way outside of all of that, but I just look in and it interests me because it is a family you guys have. Like, it's really, really amazing how you guys cheer for each other and know a lot about each other. It's a much smaller sport, obviously, so it is that family atmosphere. But yeah. I would love to do something. You really got to think about the similarities between interior line play and wrestling. And we understand that there's not many wrestlers outside of, guys 147. I mean, what's the smallest guy you think could be a wrestler / football player? I mean, they get a little too small, but the heavy boys playing the offensive line and playing defensive line with the hand-to-hand combat drills, the center of gravity, the hand placement, this and that, the hip movement, all that. It's all about offensive, defensive lineman play. It's just amazing, and there should be something done, like the correlation between the two. I know that I played basketball in high school, and we were definitely I know that Joe loved the fact that we were basketball players. Marco was a lacrosse player. Andre, I, and Jeff Hardings were all basketball players. But Bucky Greeley is in the High School Hall of Fame, Pennsylvania State Hall of Fame for wrestling. So, I mean, I never really wrestling wasn't big at my high school. Obviously, McDermott changed that 2 years after I had left. But the correlation between the two is pretty interesting. I think that we could do something about that, talk a lot about that. How many guys in the NFL have wrestling background? It's really, really crazy.
Yeah. No, it is. It is a sport that translates very well in that regard, because it's all about that power, quickness, balance, and
gravity, having your legs. You can't bring your legs together. You got to have your pillar. You got to have your gravity, your center of gravity. Yep. You can't overextend. I mean, it's crazy to think about the correlation. And you think that there would be more people starting kids wrestling and this and that, and then because it gears so much towards football, and vice versa.
NFL playoffs without the Steelers will start this week. The Eagles are indeed the top seed in the NFC. Your thoughts just on the way that the season finished up, and as you kind of look at the playoff picture, what you're expecting to see over the coming weeks? Yeah,
well, I mean, the Eagles' game plan this week was do not get Jalen Hurts hit, do not do anything out of the norm. Just win the game. That's all you have to do over a severely depleted Giants team who played nobody. So, I mean, I have friends at home who are diehard Eagle fans, and they're complaining about the effort. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, they're 14-3. Why are we complaining? Why are you complaining about how they ended the season? It doesn't matter where you end the season. It's at the end of the season. Who's going to be on top of the holding a Super Bowl trophy? So Yes, the last 3 weeks since Christmas, with Hurts being hurt, was a huge thing. They needed to win one of those games, but I'm not upset that he came back to play, Jeff, because if he didn't come back to play and they played Minshew and he won against the Giants, which he should have won against the Giants no matter what. So then you gave Hurts 2 more weeks off. So that would have been 6 straight weeks off of not playing football. I mean, the Eagles looked really, really rusty on Sunday. Yeah. But now if you gave him 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks of rest, I mean, imagine how rusty Hurts would be then. So I'm actually happy he did play. I mean, I know it was a very limited playbook and all that, but I'm very excited for that. For the Eagles, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to get there. Obviously, I'm going to root for them to be there. I just think San Francisco is just lights out right now. And in the NFC this week, the Tampa Bay and the Dallas game, that's a hell of a game right there, you know? And how about a Monday night playoff game, Jeff? Did you ever think you'd see that day?
No, and I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of it. Just objectively, I think having a team get a short week in the playoffs just seems inherently unfair.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there because my family does Christmas we're going to have Christmas in 2 weeks from now. Long story is that one of us was always playing a bowl game, so it was our father's birthday, so that's why we have our Christmas January 20th. So I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, it might be a Saturday night. The Eagles might get a home game, and I'm like, well, because they do reseed. I looked it all up in the playoffs. So if the Cowboys beat the Bucks, they're the 5 seed, and they reseed, and everything goes as according to plan. They're not going to make the Eagles play the Cowboys. The Cowboys can't play Monday and Saturday. You know what I mean? So now you're already locking the Eagles into a Sunday game. They already know that, which is okay, but it's just a little weird. I like the fact that it's a Monday night game because I enjoy watching games on Monday night, but that's a hell of a game. It's a hell of a game. It's a hell of a weekend, man. I do like how they're doing it. I don't like the Monday game, like you said. It's odd because you're really hamstringing those guys for the next week. You know?
Yeah, I mean, for the fans, it's neat, but yeah, the whole mantra of the playoffs, right, is to make it as fair as possible, give everybody. And I just don't think you're. And I'm not saying that a team, obviously, the winner of that game could win the following week, but it's just. I just don't think it's a good look for the NFL that you're having a short week for one of the teams in the playoffs. That just goes against everything that they've always done.
And it's not like they don't talk about the short week issues because there's been the Thursday night issues for the last 5 years. I mean, that's one of the things that the NFL they really need to clean that up and fix that up. And then here they go and do a Monday night playoff game, and then you're going to get a 5 or 6 day rest versus everybody else who's getting 6 or 7 days, 7 or 8 days. And then,
yeah,
they don't care.
Your thoughts on how they handled the playoff situation in the AFC with the Bills-Bengals game not being made up and then, potential for neutral sites here?
I'm 100% on board with them not playing the game because
I am too.
It was really, Skip Bayless, whatever he said was the dumbest thing I ever said because it could be taken out of context, and I think it was by a lot of people because that was one of the first things I was thinking. It was like, well, Kerry's like, well, they can't play this game. They should play this game next week. And I'm like, well, they can't do that. Do you know how many people's lives are affected by do they have the arena? Can they work that weekend? The parking, the people at the stadium, this and that. And you just can't just say, hey, we're going to play this game. You can't do that. Now, you were going to hold the playoff games for one game. I'm okay with the decision not to play the game, but I don't understand the whole we're going to play. If Buffalo and Kansas City play, they got to play in a neutral game. I'm not a fan of that. I'm really not, to be honest with you, because they're probably going to try and do it in a domed game. And I don't think that you're talking about Indianapolis, who's declined it, by the way. Have you heard all that?
I had not heard about it.
Indianapolis and Detroit, neither one can do it because they already have stuff going on those weekends. So that's the domed stadiums in the area that's sort of in between the two cities. So, I mean, first of all, I want weather to be a factor. That's the whole point of the championship games and stuff like that. I love watching a game in Buffalo when it's minus 10 degrees, or when the Steelers on Christmas Eve a couple weeks ago. My God, that looked cold.
Agreed, and that's part of why the Bills and the Bengals were fighting for home field advantage. They wanted
you got to come to Ironhead.
That weather condition.
Yeah, and then Kansas City's no choke either weather-wise. Yeah. So if they it would be very interesting to see where they move it, to be honest with you. I mean, somebody is saying Nashville because it's sort of like a halfway point for the two, and I don't really know if that's really the case. If it was Buffalo and Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Is Cincinnati involved in this too?
Yes.
Oh, so all three are involved. See, like I said, I didn't read into it. I read a little bit about it, but I was just like, once they started the coin flips, it lost me. I was completely gone.
Yeah.
And then neutral sites and stuff like that. So I remember the coin flip that was Baltimore and Cincinnati, but that didn't play out. So, but either one of those three, if either two of those three are going to play in the title game, they're going to have it at a neutral stadium. That's insane. Wow. Did you see Beaver Stadium being mentioned?
Yeah. I mean, I would love it. It's not going to happen, but I would love it, and it would be really cool. And I mean, listen, the NFL was in a no-win situation here. It's just completely new territory. I actually think the league handled it right. I've read a lot of criticism that the game should have been played, and they had that extra week and they could have used it.
Now, see, you're right. Now, with that being said, Jeffrey, you are right a little bit there. And that is, if you took this bye week and made week 18, everybody got a bye, and you played that Buffalo versus Cincinnati game, and then everybody else had a bye, is that fair to those teams? I get it, but not fair that one of their players was deceased on the field.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, to me, it's a lot like completely different situation, I understand. But in terms of a no-win situation and trying to figure out how to navigate what is going to be an unfair situation, it's similar to the NCAA and COVID. And I think the NCAA got that wrong, by the way. I don't think giving the extra year to the kids the year after and not giving it to the kids who were directly impacted that season with the postseason, because now, not to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but I mean, a guy like Vincenzo Joseph never got a chance to wrestle in a fourth NCAA tournament. And now a guy like Carter Starachi has a chance, as we sit here today, to be a 5-time national champion. That I don't think the NCAA got that right. I actually think, given the circumstances, and no matter in both cases, there was no scenario where everybody was going to sit back and say, "Yep, you got it right, completely fair to everybody," because it's impossible. It's because of the situation. It was not going to be fair to everybody. There's just no way to make it so. I actually think the NFL got this right. I think it is as good of a situation as they could have created given the circumstances in terms of relative fairness to everybody involved. And yeah, there's no question that it's not fair to some of the teams involved. But again, no matter what they did, it wasn't going to be completely fair and equitable to everybody. It was just the circumstance that they were put in. I actually, for one of the few times, I applaud the NFL. I think they actually got this absolutely right and handled it, from my perspective, as best as they possibly could have.
They had to move on. That was the thing, is that they had to move on to the second part of their season, and that was the, getting the playoff set and get the playoff straight. And I guess that they really gave nobody any kind of advantage. No one has a more of an advantage than anybody else. But my Lord, I mean, you think that Buffalo's got a lot to play for right now. They really do. And they got a lot of people in their corner rooting for them, the way they've handled everything. And Sean McDermott, I know he's a LaSalle guy, and, we both love him. We both really like him. Both loves the way he coaches. But I think America's catching on to see what kind of man he really, really, truly is.
Yeah, no question.
It's just amazing. So, Ironhead, remember I was just doing the NCAA just giving away the just the painted years. Say, okay, you have a COVID year. Did we talk about UVA football?
I don't know if we talked about it on air. We've talked about it. I don't remember now if we talked about it on air or not.
Something like that is saying that the seniors that are on UVA's football team are allowed to come back and play again next year. Now, how is that not a recruiting advantage? You're gonna. I don't know how many guys it is. It could be 5 guys. It could be 10. It could be 15. But do they have more scholarships? So and this just goes back to the whole COVID thing. We talk about everybody got a free extra year out of it. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't like how the NCAA just comes in and says, "Okay, you can have an extra year now." Like I don't understand. There's rules and
no, I don't like that, and it's not. I mean, your heart obviously goes out to that team. I think it is setting a really bad and dangerous precedent. And Goon, I mean, we've all known, and and this is the problem, that there are individuals who have gone through living hell, right? Like we've had kids over the years who have lost both of their parents, whether in a car accident, not here at Penn State. I'm saying across the country. There are all kinds of real life stuff going on that can impact kids, and we've just never offered that as the remedy. Is that, okay, because you're going through really hard times. And I mean, it stinks. And, but I think you're opening up a real problem here. If you're going to say, well, yes, because there was a tragic circumstance, we're going to give you an extra year of eligibility. I just think then how can you turn away anybody who says, and listen, with the mental health component that we're all acknowledging now is rightfully being addressed after way too long. I mean, are we going to get to the point where a kid says, listen, I just need a year off, I'm stressed out, and the NCAA or whatever the governing body is, it just says, okay, well, we'll just defer. You already took your redshirt year, but this is an extra year. I mean, how many 6th and 7th year seniors are we going to see down the road? We have a ton right now because of the COVID situation, but I just don't think I don't think this is the right thing to do. And in part, it's because that the college programs are set up for those 4 or 5 year windows, right? And mostly 5-year windows, but it affects everything. And it may be a recruiting advantage in some ways, and I hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, listen, if I'm the guy that, that quarterback was going to be graduating and I was going to be the guy coming in, I'm the 5-star stud that's ready to come in and start as a true freshman. Now you're telling me I have to sit for a year or two. Maybe never mind. I'm going to go on to somewhere else. And it just, again, there's that ripple effect. The coaches with all of these sports, I mean, they're all looking and piecing everything together based on that 4 or 5 year eligibility window, and knowing that, okay, we've got to build up this guy for this position or this spot because this person's graduating this year. And you have to factor in, and it's one of the challenges of many challenges of coaching, right? Is, okay, well, there was a time where you could pencil a guy in. All right, we know this guy's going to be here for 4 years or 5. And then we know that the next guy has to be recruited for that, hopefully transition year, whatever. Well, now you got to factor in, well, if the guy's really good, he might be going pro, or if the guy's not happy, he might be transferring out. And now you're factoring in also, well, yeah, if there's some kind of additional hardship that we weren't expecting, there might be an extra year of eligibility. It impacts everything. And with as easy as it is for guys to transfer, again, I don't know. I haven't really sat down and looked at the Virginia situation, but again, if the stud receiver, I've been playing behind and I'm going into my sophomore year and I'm like, yep, I spent 2 years learning from him, but I know he's graduating. Whoop, nope, he's not graduating. Now I've got another year. Well, do I really want to sit for another year behind this guy, or do I want to go? there's a ripple effect there, and I just don't know.
And have we ever figured out the scholarship numbers? Like, does a COVID year count towards the 105 towards football? You know what I mean? Or is there like?
It does not. There's I don't know exactly how it's.
85. Excuse me.
No, it's waived. But yeah, that scholarship limit is waived. Because of it, which also causes issues. Because
unbelievable. And then you're the people who were getting screwed. I remember you saying this 2 years ago. The people who are going to get screwed are the high school recruits.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, we have this guy here who's coming in for a 6th year, and we don't have room for you, and we'd love to have you, but can you walk on and we'll put you on scholarship of the year? It stinks. It really does for all those kids. And I know we jumped around, but the UVA thing, I know it was a couple months ago, but for them just to say, hey, you get another year, when you bought the COVID thing, I just bought that in my head. Like, there's never been any kind of like studies or thought process going into it, just saying, okay, yeah, you have another year. Like, you could just give these things away. It's just, wrestling especially. Okay, so offensive line, as a football player, you want to recruit a quarterback, but you're Cale Sanders, so you got a 125 guy you got your eyes on. You're not going to recruit for you got a guy. It happened to him. What was the guy from Rutgers?
Yep, Soriano.
Yeah, so he was the 125 for going to be there for 4 years. Well, 5, right? Because 1 Olympic year or something. So you don't recruit a 125 for 2 years, right? Right. And how bad is that still put? Because I heard some people the other night complaining about it watching the match, saying we just can't get that spot filled, and I just laugh at it. But
yeah, no, it does. It has an ongoing impact. There's no way around that. Want to switch topics, Goon, talk a little bit Penn State basketball. Great first half at the Palestra. It was a neat atmosphere. Were you surprised? I'm not necessarily surprised that Shrewsbury commented on the officiating, the timing of it. I just don't know that after that game is where I would have. I think I understand his frustration. But Purdue was the better team, and Purdue was going to win that game regardless.
Yes.
I was a little surprised that he picked that as the time. And again, I get the frustration, and maybe it just was. It's been
people were asking him what led to your technical, and I think that's where he started going down that route, and then you can see him acting like my father and slowly building up his rage, and then getting more and more mad. Yeah. And you know what, Ironhead, I thought about it, but I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I was going to copy and send the article to Pat Chambers. And I say, Pat, this is exactly what you talked about for 10 years here. Yeah. There's a disrespect towards Penn State basketball forever. And I don't know what it is about it, but it just seems that it's like, we obviously have a chip on our shoulder as a football program. We know that. We've always had that type of thing when it comes to the Big Ten. But basketball has always been they always played second fiddle, and they've always seemed to get screwed a whole bunch. And the Big Ten doesn't really do anything to help them out. It really doesn't. So I didn't send it to Pat because I'm like, Pat's at Florida Gulf Coast now. He doesn't need to read this. But I knew Pat well. You knew Pat well. You knew that was an issue with him with the Big Ten. The officiating, they never got calls, ever got calls. I think it was Shep Garner or Tony Carr who got hammered on a play, and there was no call, and he was just like, you know what? Any other player in this league gets that call. This kid's a star. I don't understand why we're not getting those calls. And listening to Shrew talk about that exact thing, talking about there's no respect. I'm trying to fight for my guys. That's the exact same battle that Pat had for 10+ years here.
Yeah, and it goes back before that. You're right, later, ladies and gentlemen. That Indiana game is still indicative of how Penn State basketball gets the short end of the stick in the conference, and
it always feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's and listen, I will say Penn State's lack of inside presence, obviously, we've known that is, and against a team like Purdue, obviously that's going to show up and did show up in a big way. But I think Shrewsbury's point with as much penetration as Penn State was doing to not get calls in what was a physical game, and then the calls started going the other way in that second half. I mean, I get the frustration. As
an athlete, especially a football player, but you can say it it's just like baseball too. If you're going to have a high strike zone or a wide strike zone, call it like that the whole game. Right. If you're going to call a tight game and call every pass interference or every hold or this or that or every ticky-tack foul on a basketball court, just do it the whole game. There's nothing that drives players and coaches crazier than having just this rotating. Okay, is he going to call that or not right now? Right. Your referee is a referee. We understand that. An umpire is an umpire. He, in the first inning he calls a low strike. Okay, the baseball player is going to say, all right, he's calling that. I got to cut down my strike zone, this and that. But then in the sixth inning he calls a low strike, a ball. People are starting to get flipping out and saying just call it like it is and just call it fair. I go back to last year's Super Bowl. I remember watching it, saying this is an unbelievable game because they are letting these guys play. I remember saying it like it was yesterday because I was like, this is a very physical game, but they're letting them play. And then in the last 4 minutes of that game, they called every freaking possible penalty they could out there, and it changed the whole dynamic of the game. And there's nothing more infuriating as an athlete than that, and a coach, than that. Just keep it the same. Now, think about what Pat Kraft was doing when at the Big Ten meetings in the summertime, talking about the disrespect and this and that. I think Pat is the kind of guy who's going to go to the basketball conference next year and say, hey, I'm sick and tired of this. I mean, I know I'm a new guy here at Penn State, but this seems to be a freaking trend over here. It really, really does. So, looking back at how Pat was angry about our home football scheduling, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a guy who's going to go fight for us because obviously no one else is listening. We sound like a bunch of whiners complaining all the time about it, but if you constantly see it and it's constantly happening, come on, man. Somebody's got to do something about it. But it was a great game down at the Palestra in a great environment. I love the Palestra more than any other place to watch a basketball game in this world. Just keep it honest and keep it fair. I mean, you're right. They were not going to beat that Purdue game because Purdue was going to get their bearings eventually, and they were going to take the crowd out of it is what they did, and then they just took the game over. And having a 7'4" dude in the middle who literally could just turn around and just dunk the ball was just insane to me. Because my wife was there, and she texted me, and she says, this dude is enormous. I mean, a 7'4" dude. That's unbelievable. And I'm 6'7". He's got 9 inches on me.
Yeah, but he's not like Manute Bol tall. He's thick
and dumb. I remember watching him as a young guy saying, this kid can't walk and chew gum. And I told Carrie that the other night, and she was like, yeah, he was actually pretty athletic. And I said, yes, he's really, really, really improved. And the problem is, not the problem, I mean, he probably grew into his body. He stopped growing up, and he could actually fill out a little bit and learn how to use his body. Because when you grow that fast, my God, you're so brittle and you don't understand. You're uncoordinated, but when you stop and you fill out, you start getting better from there. I know that from my own personal opinion. From when I was 17, between my junior and senior year in high school, I stopped growing taller and I started to fill out, and my athleticism quadrupled because I learned how to use my body. Yeah. And a guy like that he reminded me, just throw a name at you here, Ironhead. Remember Frank Kaminsky with Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I remember watching him, 10, 15 years ago, and I'm watching him as a freshman, and I'm like, dude, this guy's a stiff. I mean, he can't even just stand there without looking dorky and this and that. Lo and behold, 2 years later, he's the NCAA Player of the Year because he stopped growing and learned how to play the game, and it was very impressive. So that's what I compared him to.
Speaking of officiating, I'll make this one a short one, and I won't get worked up. But my daily rant on the replay and officiating. 3 things on Sunday just drove me crazy. And listen, the Steelers-Browns game, You joked last week about your hope the Utah punter survived the vicious attack. I hope that somehow the Browns quarterback is okay after that vicious, unnecessary roughness by Cam Hayward, where Hayward almost brought him to the ground. It was unbelievable. I watched it and I said, they're going to call a penalty on that, and sure as hell did. And I said, what do you think? Mean Joe Green watches that game. What do you think he's saying? And listen, I get that they're trying to protect the quarterback, and I get the mistakes can be made because you're trying to protect, and it might look worse than it is, and that sort of thing. But that play didn't even look bad. I'm watching it in real time. Like, I don't understand. And the thing is, that whole game, the Steelers had trouble getting them to the ground, right? Yeah. Like, that was the whole thing. Like, you couldn't just – I don't know what they want him to do. It wasn't a hard tackle, but he held on to him to make sure he got to the ground, because all game long they weren't able to get him to the ground. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, Nick Foles was wrapped up, and then he spun out of it and threw a long pass. So what do you expect these guys to do? Just like say – and you're starting to notice it. I don't know if you've noticed it, Jeff, or not. I think it was the Chargers game, and Herbert was rolling out to his left, and you saw a guy, he had him dead to rights. And he pulled up. He should have just ran through him and smashed him, got the sack, and he got to him, and then you could see him slow up and pull up a little bit because he's like, I'm not going to get a penalty out of this. And that's changing the game. You are directly affecting the game now with your officiating and with your opinion of what's roughing and what's not roughing. Yeah, and so that I'm completely unbiased, Goon, the lack of a face mask call in that same game against the Steelers was also equally absurd. It was, there wasn't anybody watching that game that didn't say, oh, that was a face mask. How did he fall on his face first? I don't understand how that happened. And how does his head get spun around? Obviously very frustrating for Steelers fans was the Jets-Dolphins game, where you get the horse collar call on a play where there was no horse collar, and that leads to the 50-yard field goal that ends the Steelers' playoff hopes. So, I don't know how that game plays out. Obviously, I'm not saying with the way the Jets were playing and Joe Flacco's lack of producing anything at the quarterback spot, I'm not saying that the Jets were definitely going to win had that call been made, but or not been made. But come on, you can't be directly impacting games. And I just go back again. If we're going to have instant replay, why can you not look at a blatant face mask, a clear non-roughing the passer, or a clear non-horse collar call, and overturn those calls if the point of instant replay is, by God, we got to get it right? If you I know your argument there on the plays that can impact the game. But are they gonna do non-calls to? I'm not busting your balls. I'm serious. Are they gonna do like non-calls? Somebody's gonna call down there and say, "Hey, you missed a hold. You missed a pass interference. This and that." I get it. And that's been my point. They get rid of it. You're right. But there have been blatant holds. Where if you could go back and on the replay, it's like, well, yeah, my gosh, he grabbed the jersey and dragged him down, and that guy was about to make the sack. If not for that, and there was no holding call, well, that impacts the game every bit as much as a pass interference call. And that's my point, is either, yes, let's change the game and let's just have somebody up in the booth looking at every play, and get the calls right if that's what the objective is, or let's just do away with replay and understand that, yes, there are human beings involved in all elements of the game, including officiating, and they're going to get it wrong sometimes, and you just play on. My new one is, you got guys my size going against each other, like, 300, 400, 500-pound men smacking together, this and that. You could call hands to the face every play. Like, I'm sorry, I'm 6'7", I'm 6'8". I'm going to miss. I'm going to hit you up by your mask or your helmet. They could call that every play. And I just think unless
the offensive lineman or defensive lineman's helmet's coming off, they're not going to call it. But I swear to God, the referees always have that in their pocket. It's like if they want to make a late call and this and that and get somebody a first down, they can find it. You're looking for something, you can find it, and especially when it comes to hands to the face, illegal touching downfield. I mean, come on, man. You got guys who are running 4.340s running next to each other. They're going to be in contact together. Did you see the Geno Smith late running out of bounds and hitting Jalen Ramsey? Did you see that non-call or that call?
No.
So he ran out of bounds on the left sideline, and Jalen Ramsey was standing there. He ran. He lowered his head and hit Jalen Ramsey, and they just had this big, heavy contact. Ramsey was standing there. It wasn't like he ran through Geno Smith, and they called a 15-yard personal foul on Jalen Ramsey, put him in field goal range, kicked the field goal. Seattle's in the playoffs. And you're just sitting there. You're like, you can call that every play. Guys can set up and manipulate that every play. Because I watched it, and I said, wow, what the hell is Ramsey thinking? And he's yelling at his sideline, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? He didn't do it. He always crying and this and that. And I'm telling you, I saw the replay, and I could not believe what I saw. Could not believe what I saw. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a nice hour of bitching and moaning right there, Ironhead. That was pretty good. Good venting.
I feel better. Not gonna lie, I feel better.
What did you shrink for?
Yeah,
Save all that money.
It helped. And the Steelers did not have a losing season again under Tom.
That's amazing. It really is. Truly is amazing. 3 coaches since 1969. That's impressive. Him not having a losing season and people still complaining about him. That's what is just absolutely amazing.
It is. All right. Well, we'll bitch some more on Thursday.
Yeah, boy.
Let's do it. Until then, and we'll be back at Quaker Steak and Lube on Thursday. Our thanks to the Dear Booch for accommodating us for the remote show today. Until Thursday, be good and be safe.